obviously people that I'm aware who may not be able to attend. If they're not here, I will read their question out and their response will be given to their question. Councillor Jim.
Thank you, Steve. Colleagues, you will have read the report, and could I move the recommendations set out in paragraph 10, and that is, Cabinet is content that the developer's Skerningham master plan is consistent with the local plan policy and the Skerningham Garden Village Design Code supplementary planning document, which we agreed previously. Cabinet agrees with the Skerningham Garden Village master plan. And finally, any subsequent revisions of the Skerningham Garden Village master plan be returned to Cabinet. And if I could say some words before we get into questioning and debate. I want to remind colleagues of where we are. We have a plan that was agreed in 2022, and as I've indicated before, I did not vote for this plan, and it was agreed by the last administration, the Conservative administration. But we have a plan that is now in place. That plan agreed that Skerningham become an allocated site in the local plan, and that is now widely accepted. So consequently, the principle of development at Skerningham is already established. However, as we are all aware, policy H10 of the local plan requires the production of a master plan. Now, colleagues, the aim of the master plan is to ensure Skerningham Garden Village is planned as a single cohesive development, fully supported by necessary infrastructure provision and with appropriate mitigation measures. The master plan will also guide the development in coming forward in a coordinated and phased manner. It's important to note that the master plan, as I've indicated, may change over time. Importantly, the master plan is the developer's document. It is not a council document, and I've indicated that several times to many people by email when questioned. So the decision before us is as to whether the developer's Skerningham master plan accords with the local plan policy H10 and the Skerningham Garden Village Design Code supplementary planning document. I need to say the master plan is not required to be the perfect master plan, meeting all of our wishes and desires. All it must do is pass the technical assessment, and that is, as I've said, it's consistent with local plan policy H10 and the Skerningham Garden Village Design Code SPD. The officer's recommendation, as set out in the report, is that the master plan meets that test. Additionally, given the level of interest, and let's be clear, this is a contentious issue. I instructed that legal counsel advice be sought, and that legal counsel has confirmed that the master plan as circulated and issued is consistent with policy H10, the local plan, and the design code. As required by policy H10, the draft master plan went through a consultation exercise running from the 30th of October to the 30th of November 2023. A full statement of community involvement detailing the developer's consultation process is attached in Appendix 2, and I'm sure colleagues have read that. Also, approximately 5,000 leaflets were just distributed to homes and businesses near the site during October 2023 to advertise the consultation, and the developers held drop-in consultation events at the Dolphin Centre and also in the Astor lobby on Windrush Way. In response to community feedback, they also ran 2 consultation events at West Oak Parish Hall. So, in total, the consultation website received over 1,700 unique visitors, 215 responses to the online survey were also submitted. In addition, over 300 people also attended the drop-in sessions. Officers' judgment is therefore that the master plan has met the requirement in policy H10 that the master plan is prepared in consultation with the community. As I've said, Skerningham Garden Village is a long-term project. The master plan is a document that will be reviewed over time. Therefore, it is also proposed that subsequent revisions, as I've said earlier, of the Skerningham Garden Village master plan brought back to Cabinet to ensure members have oversight of the project as it evolves. And finally, on a related matter, I'm pleased to say, following campaigning by myself, and to be fair, other councillors in this room from various political groups, such that the developers informed me that they have secured the land necessary to build a temporary haul road and now are exploring its construction. This would ensure, and I know that this has caused concern for a number of residents, particularly in Darlington Lane, and indeed during the design code discussion, I made a personal comment about my concerns on it. But this will ensure that construction traffic does not need to use Darlington Lane to access phase 1 of Skerningham, and this will significantly lessen the impact of construction vehicles on the lives of local people. Thank you. Chair.
Thank you, Nick. So I'll now go through the some people that have indicated to speak. I should have said that the order that they're in is simply the order that we have the request made that they wish to speak. The first person on my list is Brian Hancock, and I'm not sure if he's here. There's some. No. So in this case, I'll read Brian's question as I said I would, and then we'll hear a response. Brian's question is fairly lengthy, so forgive me, it reads as this. It is stated on page 7, point 3.6, that the response rate to public reviews of 5.2% against the developments reflects a modest interest from the community. I would suggest that this is more a reflection of people thinking there is no point in getting involved, because the developers of the council will do what they want, regardless of any community comments. I suggest this is the case, using the low response rates as a rationale for not making any changes to the plan. The approval of all the recent housing developments would suggest that any objections are disregarded in the drive for additional council tax revenues. The additional bills are 600 houses between the A167 and the East Coast Main Line, plus 1,050 between Barton Lane and Bishopton Lane. If I understand the phasing plan correctly, these will be the only bills before 2036, and as any bills after this date fall outside the current local planning period. This being the case, the total number of houses to be built in the next 10 to 12 years is limited to 1,650 in total. The phasing plan diagram would also suggest this to be the case. Yet there is a note on page 20.4.5 that there should not be a cap on bills based on the number of 1,650. This suggests that these numbers may well be exceeded in the period of the initial phases of the whole plan. What assurance is going to be given that no additional bills will be authorised before 2036? If no additional bills are in the plan before 2036, what is the point of completing it to cover such a long period? I am of the opinion that the additional bills will be pulled forward as soon as they can. The plan states that the part of the link road between Barton Lane and Bishopton Lane will be completed at some point between house builds 200 and 450. Reference page 23.4.13. This part of the link road will be completed prior to house number 450 being completed. What guarantee can be given that this work will actually be completed within this build period, I suspect the road build will be pushed back after this period due to cost pressures. As an alternative, if the developer is serious about building this half building road, why not build it at the start? The plan timing states it should be completed with less than half the houses in this part of the development being completed. So the issue of building first should not be an issue. This would also keep construction traffic off Darlington Lane, which is just not suitable for this type of traffic. I suspect the developer will want to continually push back due to costs. Being cynical, I would suggest that the recent resurfacing of Darlington Lane was done with this development in mind, as there are roads in the town that need resurfacing much more than Darlington Lane. And that's Mr. Hancock's question.
Thank you, Chair. I have a formal response, but I would make some brief comment, particularly in relation to the resurfacing of Barton Lane, which I didn't know about, but as I understand it, it was campaigned for, and credit to them, some of the local councillors. So, I just make that point that I think it's more local calls for action and an indication of need rather than a longer term objective. The second point I'll make is one of the issues that I found throughout this process, and I have, and you, Steve, we have replied to many emails on this. I do think some of the issues that have been raised, there's been a confusion or conflation between a master planning process and the planning application process. And indeed, many of the issues that have been raised will actually be dealt with as part of the planning application process. But in response to Mr. Hancock, I would say, and I will be writing to Mr. Hancock, you asked what assurances can be given that no additional bills will be authorised before 2036, which is technically the end of the plan period. No absolute assurance can be given due to the wording of policy H2 of the local plan, paragraph 6.1016 on page 64 of the same. Policy H2 sets out that the housing yield identified for each site of the local plan is for indicative purposes only, and that the final number of homes to be delivered on each site will be determined by the planning application process. However, there are controls within the policy that would make it very difficult for site developers to deliver more than 1,650 dwellings before 2036. This is the requirement set out by policy H10, which I've mentioned before, that prior to the occupation of between the 900th and the 1500th dwelling, the local distributor road between the A167 and the A1150 be completed in its entirety. At present, the site developers anticipate the distributor road being completed in phase 4 of the development between 2036 and 2041. Additionally, policy H10 sets out that any proposal that exceeds 1650 dwellings, 1,650 dwellings, in advance of a review of the local plan, would need to carry out a review of all associated infrastructure requirements. Regarding the creation of the distributor road, as far as I'm aware, this is being funded by the developers. It's certainly not being funded by Darlington Borough Council. This differs from Bertree Garden Village, where its spine road has been delivered up front, largely due to Homes England grant. Without such grants, it's simply not possible nor practical to deliver significant infrastructure in advance of the first houses being constructed. Again, through the local plan contains a requirement that prior to the occupation of the 200th to the 450th dwelling on the eastern part of the allocation, near Winfield at the top of Barton Lane, the section of the local distributor road between Barton Lane and Bishopton Lane must be delivered. Therefore, at planning application stage, and this is really important, at planning application stage, the council will be able to set a planning condition that ensures that no houses beyond the 449th dwelling can be occupied until that link is made and in place. Thank you, Chair. And we will send this to Ms. Harrington.
Thank you, Chris. The next person I have on my list is Alan McDowell.
Good evening. I'm representing Winfield Residents Association.
Could you speak to the microphone, please, Alan? Is that all right?
Sorry,
Could you use the microphone? I can't hear you.
can you hear? Yep, it goes. Okay. I'm representing Winfield Residents Association. And the news tonight about the road is to be welcomed. But we need a bit more information on that. I'll start with the presentation. Once Winfield Residents Association is sure that Cabinet members will have received guidance from council officers in relation to the master plan, the Winfield Residents Association themselves like to highlight some issues which we feel should be taken into consideration in deciding on the approval of the master plan. For members' benefit, Winfield Residents Association is a community group representing residents of the ward of Winfield. The ward of Winfield will see the greatest impact of this development, as will Harrogate Hill, Ward, and Sad Village and Liverpool Central. The ward of Winfield will see the greatest impact of this development in terms of infrastructure, i.e. roads, schools, GP surgeries, etc. And the residents therefore have serious concerns about how this development will be delivered to minimise this impact. We need a master plan that supports the minimal impact, and that considers both the local plan and the design code requirements. You've said tonight, Chris, that it does. So that is what, and I'll go on to know that the Winfield residents have a number of questions about the master plan covering affordable housing, drainage infrastructure, which is not difficult. Also, 20-minute walking distance to available services. Now, from looking at the statistics from the Department for Education, the nearest secondary school to Skerningham development is Longfield, which is more than 20 minutes away from Skerningham. But I'll turn now to my question. As per policy H10 of the local plan, the Skerningham Garden Village development requires a local distributor road. You mentioned that tonight. The master plan states that the delivery of the local distributor road will depend upon development landowners delivering their section of the land. It is clear from both the master plan and the planning application already submitted that no agreements have been reached with landowners to secure development for the distributor road. Is that correct? Or not? In this regard, the master plan, if you haven't got all the landowners involved, then the view of Winfield Residents Association is that the master plan fails on that basis. barrister's advice over the master plan to ensure its compliance with the local development, the local plan. In the absence of any formal agreements to secure the land to build the road, what guarantees and assurances have been obtained to convince both the barrister and the council that the local distributor road will actually be delivered complying with the local plan? Will it be delivered?
Okay, in response, yes. Colin
Cattle Black, I do apologise, Alan, I only need some mic as well, sorry about that. And may I call you Alan? We do know each other, is that okay?
Sorry?
May I call you Alan?
Sorry.
Alright. Okay. Alright. Mr. McNabb, just in response, the first thing to say is you make a valid comment on the whole road, the route from Bishopton Lane. I have had indication that land is secured and a plan is being developed. It's something that I will be following it up. It's something that from taking on this portfolio I've stressed to developers the need to get an alternative solution for construction traffic, and I will ensure that local people are kept updated on that. In terms of your specific questions, and I think you were referring to the local distributor road and policy page 10. As I've indicated, the local plan contains a requirement that prior to the occupation of the 200th to the 450th dwelling, it's actually 449th dwelling, on the eastern part of the allocation, so that's at the top of Barton Lane, the section of the local distributor road between Barton Lane and Bishopton Lane must be delivered. Therefore, at planning stage, where a lot of this detail is dealt with, the council will be able to set a planning condition that ensures that no houses beyond the 449th dwelling can be occupied until that link is in place. Policy H10 also states that prior to the occupation between the 900th and 1500th dwelling, the local distributor road between the A167 and the A1150 be completed in its entirety. The council will also be able to set planning conditions based upon this trigger point. I did receive some further questions which you haven't asked, which came via Winfield Residents Association. So what I intend to do is write back to the Secretary of Winfield Residents Association with answers to those questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McNabb. The next person I've got on my list is Leanne Cowell.
That's really cool. Yeah, I did know that.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Am I okay holding it?
Yeah.
I've got more than sort of a statement to make with worries about the master plan rather than questions. I would appreciate if I could be given time to read all my points. I've got a few. Lynn said I should probably get about 10 minutes if the chair's in a good mood.
It's up the way.
Anyway, I'll get started. Supporting text for policy H10, para 610.3 says the master plan plus infrastructure phasing plan will be prepared and then agreed with the council in advance of any planning application being submitted. Point 14 of the main report doesn't make this clear and just says para 610.3 of the local plan, part of the supporting text for policy H10, states that the finalised comprehensive master plan needs to be agreed with the council. It misses out the bit about the master plan needing to be agreed in advance of any planning application being submitted. There are currently 2 planning applications in for Skerningham. One was submitted shortly before the local plan was adopted, and the other one was put in this summer and it includes some council-owned land. I'm concerned that this is a slippery slope to cutting more corners. The not yet agreed master plan is required to incorporate the following principle from policy H10. Prior to the completion of the development on the western part of the application, between the A167 and the East Coast Main Line, the remaining section of the local distributor road to the East Coast Main Line should be delivered. The master plan assessment says the section of the local distributor road between the A167 and East Coast Main Line should be delivered in phase 1 prior to the completion of the development. The map for phase 1 shows the road going right up to the main line. However, Banks' outline planning application for this part is for 600 houses, so the total number of homes proposed for land to the west of the main line, and no road right up to the main line. Their planning application says it is proposed that the link road will be constructed up to and including the second site access point as part of this planning application. Following the second roundabout, there is approximately 150 metres of land up to the East Coast Main Line boundary. It also says that the road past that second access point doesn't form part of the planning application and will be delivered at a later date. Andy Casey, Head of Highways, told the planning inspector that Banks can't construct the bridge once the site is complete because of the major earthworks that will be involved. With regards to the bridge over the main line, in Appendix 3, summary of changes, it says the location of the bridge has been agreed in principle with Network Rail. The next stage in the process is to obtain technical approval, which will comprise full details of the bridge design. Discussions on this remain ongoing, although it is not considered that this will affect the level of information shown in the master plan. The master plan, however, doesn't reflect this and says discussions are ongoing with Darlington Borough Council and Network Rail in relation to the proposed crossing of the East Coast Main Line. The route of the local distributor road shown remains illustrative but includes the location of the bridge that has been identified following the technical work undertaken to date. Network Rail has been consulted on the preferred location and advised that the next stage is to gain approval in principle in relation to the construction of the bridge. This should be secured as part of the development phase east of the A167. Therefore, it's not clear if approval in principle has been granted or not, and the bridge is a really key bit of infrastructure. With Banks having submitted their outline plan application early, we know that they are limited to 300 dwellings until the point of a second access can be secured. The second access will be the bridge over the East Coast Main Line. I don't see how the master plan could show 450 dwellings being delivered in phase 1 plus 150 in phase 2, which ends in 2333, if the bridge over the East Coast Main Line and the completion of the local distributor road in its entirety isn't proposed until phase 4, 2036 to 2041, which would open up a second access for them. The master plan contains references to the Darlington Northern Relief Road, but reference to this road had to be removed from Part G of Policy H10 and the Design Code. Since the change in government, £250 million in funding is under review until spring 2025 anyway, making the wording in the master plan out of date too. The master plan is not consistent with the local plan and the Design Code SPD. The master plan said that the progress of the road project would need to be kept under review to ensure that the delivery of Skerningham would not prejudice the delivery of the DNRR and vice versa. The large Northumbrian Water Limited water pipeline plan application is in. It was validated on the 31st of October, and the route passes through Banks as part of the site to the north of the distribution road, where some development sites are located. It's unclear if this has been factored in to check if it will impact phasing. The master plan should be based on the design approach and principles established in the Council's Design Code. One of these principles was that the road will be aligned to avoid existing wooded areas as much as possible. Sistra Limited was appointed by the Darlington Borough Council to undertake a feasibility study to examine the options available for crossing the East Coast Main Line. The report is dated the 30th of September 22 and came with 2 overbridge options and 2 underpass options. Once the road cleared the East Coast Main Line, all options show it taking an instantaneous change in direction to avoid Scully Woods and then running parallel to the East Coast Main Line. The underpass options were disregarded due to cost. Option 1 emerged as the preferred option and was taken forward to the next stage. In Appendix 3, summary of changes, however, it says the road broadly follows the alignment shown in Figure 6.1 and 6.2 of the local plan. This alignment is also shown in the Design Code. It is noted that the Design Code encourages the road to avoid existing wooded areas as much as possible. This approach has been followed and it has not been possible to find an appropriate option which avoids the woodland. What happened to option 1 that would have avoided the woods, and by not taking it forward, the design principle that could be followed isn't being. The design code says that a 20-minute walkable neighbourhood should be achieved. The master plan states that due to the size and shape of the site, it is not possible to deliver all new homes within a 20-minute round walking trip distance. The master plan map for phase 3 on page 33 shows a section of the local distribution road going in around Skerningham Lane East, but there's no mention of this under the heading transport. And finally, on page 16 of the master plan, it says the golf club is to remain in situ, so the land will be removed from the planning application boundaries. If it's removed from the planning application boundaries, page 8 shouldn't be saying that some land parcels not used by the golf club may be available for development. Also, if it's removed from the planning application boundaries, the design code wouldn't be able to follow through with its proposals for the land if the golf club remains in situ, such as developing it as a greater community asset for events, services and social support, making the green infrastructure a more visible and usable public amenity, and creating safe and manageable access to the course. Thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you, Leanne. Chris?
Thank you, Leanne. Do you want to email those comments and I'll give you a full formal response?
Yes, can I just, can you just ask me a quick question?
It's up to the chair. Well, can I make some comment on what you said, and then you want to?
So,
It's up to you. You're the guy.
I think we'll hopefully send a response, because you'll get full, so I think some response today would be helpful. So, yeah, why don't Chris do that, and if there's something further, as you can.
All right. So, and we have corresponded about this several times, particularly in relation to planning application, and it's there's been you're not the only person. A number of people have said, why could they submit a planning application when the master plan hasn't agreed? And I think, and I was not being flippant when I wrote to you and said, anybody can submit a planning application at any time if they pay the prerequisite fee. The only obligation there is to validate it, and that will be some basic checks. The issue of whether it's analysed and then determined, as in pass or fail, that's the key issue. So there are 2 planning applications in, which have been validated, which is part of planning law, but they have not progressed into let's look at them in terms of seeking to determine whether we recommend for approval or rejection. I think the other comment I would make is we've got into quite a bit of detail, and I take colleagues back to the master plan. It is indicative. It is very high level. There will be ongoing discussion. It sets a direction of travel. The detail, the debate, the issues that you've raised and I've raised with me on hundreds of occasions, because I must have dealt with about 100 or 150 emails, and you can confirm that, can't you, Steve? They will be dealt with at planning stage. One final quick comment was around the 20-minute neighbourhoods. What the master plan talks about are 3 distinct areas. It is not possible with development of that distance and size to have a single 20-minute neighbourhood. And we should lose sight of the fact that 20-minute neighbourhoods, it's not just about having the facilities there, it's also about the infrastructure to get those facilities, but it doesn't encompass everything. And that's an important point to make, and the master plan does start to allude to and discuss some of the facilities that will exist in the context of 20-minute neighbourhood. And I would conclude with, in terms of the master plan and the recommendations before us, we've had officer advice, and as I've said, given the interest and my need for absolute assurance here, because it's a complex issue, we have sought independent legal counsel, and that advice has come back, and it's basically said that the master plan, which is a developer-led document, and that's one of the issues. We didn't have to bring it to cabinet, but we thought, given the level of interest, it was the right thing to do. It's a developer-led document, and as such, we have assessed it, officers have assessed it, and legal counsel and independent counsel has judged it that it conforms with the design code and local plan. But quite happy if you email those questions for me to give a full response.
Thank you. I stand by the point that the plan application should have gone in before it was agreed, as it says it in black and white. Thanks.
Thank you, Leanne. The next name I have on my list is Roger Fitzpatrick. As before, I'll read his question and then response will be given. During the design code consultation, residents were assured that the design code checklist would need to be adhered to.
Excuse me, terribly, we really can't hear what you're saying.
Can't hear what you're saying either.
It's quite complicated to follow, and I don't know what you can do about it.
Is that better?
Sorry?
I said it's not better. Clearly not. Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
During the design code consultation, residents were assured that the design code checklist would need to be adhered to for the development to proceed. I would therefore ask how this master plan can be approved when it clearly states, so when it clearly does not meet 20-minute walkable neighbourhood for all homes of essential services as required in the design code checklist. Will councillors refuse this master plan on the grounds it does not meet the design code checklist, and if not, what are the reasons for approving it and disregarding its requirements? Chris.
Thank you, Steve, and I will send this to Roger by email. So the first issue is relating to the design code checklist, which was written by Design North East to assess planning applications, and it will be applied to each application as it moves forward in terms of determination. So therefore, the checklist is not suitable, and again I go back to the officer advice in independent legal counsel. It's not suitable method for assessing the master plan, as it is targeted at different stages of the planning process. However, the master plan does need to be consistent with the principles set out in the design code. On page 12, the master plan notes that due to the size and shape of the site, which I've mentioned earlier, it's not possible to deliver all new homes within a 20-minute round-trip walking distance from the centrally located neighbourhood centre. However, there is an opportunity to provide local community facilities, such as the provision of a convenience store, hospitality in other areas of the site. And this is consistent with figure 35 of the design code, which illustrates that it will take a minimum of 3 20-minute zones to cover the site area, and that the eastern and western zones would need to be centred on their own local community facilities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Ralph Bradley.
Is this switched on or do I need to switch it on? It's on. Right. Thank you for letting me address the Cabinet today. Fortunately, Councillor McEwen has taken the wind out of the sails of my question. My question was regard to the whole road. But in saying that, it still leaves me with the final element of my question, and that is that the master plan identifies that access for construction will be by Bishopton Lane. So can we take it in light of what Councillor McEwen has been saying tonight, that will be adjusted and Darlington Lane will be taken out completely and access will be by Bishopton Lane within the master plan?
So, by way of background, colleagues, Mr. Bradley Ralph has written to me on several occasions pointing out the history, some of which I knew, but not all of it, going back to 1982, I think, wasn't it, Ralph, in relation to quarry, and a condition that existed about stopping quarry traffic heading up Barton Lane, and that alongside pressure from myself, but also other colleagues, some of them in this room, have indicated that the developers will develop a route from Bishopton Lane. I will liaise with the developers, because it's their master plan, to ensure that the document is edited in respect of those few words. What I need to say is I'm highly confident, but not 100% confident, that the land has been secured and they're exploring it, and they've given very, very confident indications. I want to see that road in place. That's the ultimate test here. But I will explore with the developers, because it is their master plan, to make that adjustment if we're able to, and but more importantly, write to people who have been consulted or made representations on this issue, that they're made aware of it. Okay?
Okay. Thanks for your efforts in getting that whole road constructed.
Thank you for your efforts in raising it with me, Mr. Bradley.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next name on the list is Andrew Meadowcroft.
Councillor McEwen and Councillor Harker, can I commend you with the affability and manner in which you conduct this debate? It's really quite disarming, and I commend you for that. I'm struck by the forensic detail of the contributions so far, which is obviously vitally important to the debate, but I strongly suggest that if you knock on doors and talk to people in the north of this borough, that the answer to this question will actually not be particularly forensic. It will be very simple. And sometimes politics is very simple. And what I want to say right now is very simple, which is that the master plan simply is flawed. And I think many of you on the cabinet know that, but can't actually say it. And that's why I think you should refer it on to a body with a more broader representation than this has. No building houses in Skerningham without first building a relief road. That's what we'll hear. Knock on the door anywhere in the north of the borough and you'll ask, should we build houses in Skerningham without a relief road? And you'll be told no building houses at Skerningham without first building a relief road. Your constituents will tell you no building houses in Skerningham without first building a relief road. I cannot believe that any party, any political party in Darlington wants to see an increase in the chaos on North Road, Salters Lane, Winfield Road. But here's the thing. What if you don't feel accountable to your constituents? Maybe you do feel accountable to your party. And I ask this because a reasonable person might think that if you weren't going to listen to the constituents telling you no building houses at Skerningham without first building a relief road, you didn't feel accountable to your constituents, you might feel accountable to your party.
And what if your party, as I suggest, is saying the same thing? At some point, it's fair to ask, in politics, if you don't feel accountable to your constituents telling you this, and to your party, who are you accountable to? The agenda brings into question, therefore, the meaning of accountability, and I say you can demonstrate that by referring on to your scrutiny committee. You all, as cabinet members, have a choice. Under standing orders, you have a choice under the advice of senior officers. Double-checked advice for senior officers. You have the choice to refer this to scrutiny. Why should you do this? Why should you refer the matter for broader, wider scrutiny? And I believe it's about the way this process is perceived across the borough. Of the many reasons, this is the one. The parties making this decision around this table, this highly contentious decision, failed to achieve even 40% of support in the borough. And it can't be any surprise that people wonder whether or not it makes any difference to vote when a decision like this is taken by parties who can't achieve 50%, can't even achieve 40%. And that is why I believe the matter should be referred on to a body that can better represent the totality of opinion in the borough. To a body who can speak for the north of Darlington, for the people of North Road, Northgate, and yes, Horton and Springfield, who are still looking for affordable 2 or 3 bed houses, not the 4 or 5 bedroom executive homes just up the way. For the people of North Road, Northgate, Harriet Hill, Winfield, and yes, Horton and Springfield, stuck in traffic gridlock, simply trying to get to work, waiting for a relief road that might arrive. So it's late in the day, literally, it's late in the day, and even though this has been moved, it's not too late to choose to refer this on. So I ask you to consider what your constituents are saying. How this feeds into perceived failure of democracy around us. We can wring our hands about the rise of the populist right, but the way we do our politics is equally important as what we actually decide. So I ask you, at this moment, refer this matter on.
Thank you, Mr. Meadowcroft, and we have met. I think you were the agent of Ms. Simon Thorley during the mayoral, but the Liberal Democrats. Clearly, this is a complex issue, very complex. I would commend genuinely local people in terms of the level of interest and detail they've gone into. But I just want to be very clear on this call to, there were a couple of things called for. One was that we should ensure that the road is built before the houses. And if only I could do that. If only I could do that. The problem, Chairman, sorry I'm being interrupted. Shall I carry on? If only I could do that. Let's look at the facts here. We have a local plan that was agreed by the last administration, which built in policy H10, which set the rules of the game. Now, to change that plan and those rules, it's not a case of getting rid of the plan. And this is something that I've looked into over the last year about this issue, more generally about Skerningham. We need to develop a whole new plan. You cannot cancel a plan until you have a new one in place. The existing plan stands, and the developers could submit planning applications on the basis of the existing plan. So let's be very clear about that. In terms of, and this has been raised about
affordable housing. Clearly I recognise it. I speak frequently with my colleague Councillor Roach about the need for housing in this town and the need for the need for affordable housing. And let's be very clear, when or if this planning application goes to committee, it will be subject to policy H5, which sets out the requirements of any application in respect of affordable housing. And finally, there's some discussion about referring to scrutiny. I want to be very, very clear with people. This could have been agreed by officers. Steve and I took a decision to bring this to Cabinet, even though it is not a council document, so that we were cited on whether it matched or complied with the local plan and design code. And as I've said frequently, I sought external council opinion. Now, one of the risks that I think we face is if we do not start to move this issue forward, we do risk a claim of non-determination because applications haven't been put in. So, to my mind, I'm not clear on what scrutiny would do with this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I think on the point of referring to scrutiny, I think it's something that we should, within this meeting, is come back to at the end of the meeting. I do have a view about that, but I think to be fair to the people that come to the meeting, we should hear what people have to say before we refer to that. But I have heard the question, and said it's something that we should come back to later in this meeting. I've now got a couple of names that it's not clear whether you wish to speak or not, but the first is Ted Watson.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have no intention of speaking today, and I can't follow all the technicalities because that's not my background. But I'm here as a resident who lives in that area, who is absolutely heartbroken with what is being done to the ecology, to the woods, to the only open space we have left in the north of the town. And I'm looking at the people who I thought represented me. And you're not. You're representing technocrats, you're representing business, you're representing money. But I actually voted, and I thought I was voting for representation. So regardless of the obstacles, regardless of all those things, as my representatives, what are you doing about this? North Road is a nightmare already. There's no free access on the ring road, all the Middlesbrough traffic's got to come through us. We've already built hundreds and hundreds of houses around the Berkeley Lane area. This, to me, is absolute madness. And I'm at a loss, and my big disappointment is about democracy. And can I ask you all individually, do you represent me? Have you any idea, do you actually represent me? Because I might well give up voting. It's pointless. Thank you for putting
Thank you, Mr. Watson. I think you're right. I'd agree. There's a lot of technical issues and it is highly complex and technical. Just one comment I would make on ecology. And again, the master plan won't deal with it. It's one of those detailed but very important issues that will be dealt with planning. And there is enshrined in law now, any planning application that comes forward must see a 10%
increase in biodiversity net gain, and we have capability in council now to help us really look at those plans. So if developers come forward, whether it's Skerningham or any development site, by law they've got to demonstrate in a meaningful way that there will be sustainable increase in the biodiversity related to that development, and that's something that we will be monitoring going forward.
May I respond to that? Mr. Chair, may I respond?
Yes, but could you use the
Very
microphone?
briefly. Oh, I'm done from here.
Could you use the microphone? Because some people hearing is that we good?
Sorry, I use ecology simply as one of the surrounding issues. My main point is about democracy. It isn't about the ecology, it isn't about the roads. They are the substance, if you like, of why this is so deeply unpleasant and why we are so deeply against it. My question is to you all is about democracy. Thank you. Thanks for letting me come back.
Thank you.
I'll know that.
Eva Laser?
I've got nothing prepared and I'm just listening to all this. I'm just wondering, how interested is the planning department, the council, the design code in the environment there? How are they going to protect it? 10%, you rip a woodland that's decades old, that is an established ecology, you rip it up, you put roads through, you have people there, kids go tearing through the forest, the woods, whatever. You can't replace it by planting a row of trees, and a little bit of a tree there, and a tree there, and a tree there, and a pond there. You're ripping up what has been there for decades. And I've heard nothing about that here, nothing. What part does it play? How are you going to protect, will you protect Skerningham Woods or not? It's a simple, naive question maybe, but I just want to know.
Alright, just to respond, as the design code said, and I know there was some assertions from the last portfolio holder that Skerningham Woods was saved, and I know Skerningham Woods, I walk up there, my wife does the 5k circuit. We will seek, there were claims made that it was saved. I think they were inaccurate claims at that time. What the design code says is we will look to avoid it possible, and if we do have to go through at the bottom, there will be other trees planted, but we haven't got to that level of detail yet, and that level of detail will come through the planning application process.
But that doesn't tell me how interested you are in saving it. Doesn't tell me anything. We want to know it now, at some point in 2 years' time, whatever. How interested is the council? What bigger role does it play in the design code? Does it? The environment there, the whole ecology of the area. Is it about building houses, building this, building that, but you're tearing up, something that's been there forever. For what? Do we need more houses?
No.
Does anybody here,
No.
or anybody else?
Okay, can I?
Building more than we need.
Sorry?
I'm trying to have some semblance of order, just we're not going to start doing that kind of thing.
Sorry, I didn't.
Sorry. Chris, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so do we need more houses? Yes.
Right, okay.
Okay. Do we need more affordable houses? Yes.
Do we need more 3 and 4 bedroom houses? 5 bedroom houses?
Yes.
Do we?
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
No, we don't.
And that's it. Says the data.
Sorry?
Says the information
Which
and
figures?
the data. We have a housing crisis in this country, and we have a housing crisis in this town.
Yes.
And I will stand on the barricades to defend that
Yes.
assertion.
Yes.
But when we build housing, we need to do it
considering impact on the environment. That's why I said there should be 10% gain in biodiversity, and we need to be sensitive. But I am very clear, and I do not apologise. I do not apologise at all to say, because I see it as a councillor in my own ward. I speak to colleagues, so people who say generally, it may be, people say, well, not in Skerningham, but we do need more houses. And I'll conclude, Chair, with a story. I was campaigning in 2019, and it was in Winfield, and I met my daughters. You will know my daughters went to Winfield, and I know people at the doors. And I bumped into somebody on the doors, and it was down Sparrow Hall, and they said to me, "Why are you building all these houses, Chris?" And he had 2 girls, right? And I said to him, "Are you 2 girls?" He said, "No." And he said to me, "Well, one's at Harrogate Hill, and the other one is living near the college." And I made the point that from 10 years ago, there were 4 people in one house to now you had 4 people covering 3 dwellings. So there is a demand for housing, but I would agree with everybody, it needs to be the right mix in terms of an ageing population as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just to add, I think your wide points about, these are not the words you use, but I think what you're hinting at is, in this particular meeting, there's no question about what's being said. And I reflect on the fact that the decision that's being made today is a very technical decision in this process. It's about whether the document is being written by somebody else other than the local authority. And our role today is simply to determine whether what is written in that document does not contradict 2 other documents. And that is a very technical decision to make. So hence a lot of discussions and things that are being said today is quite dry, because it is, at this particular point in time, it's a decision based on the fact that's being made. All the decisions in terms of where it was much more emotion, much more passion, I would argue was to do with when the local plan was determined and when the design code document was written. The decision today is a very technical decision, and hence much of what's being said is some very dry facts that have a lot of meaning, but nonetheless dry facts with some very dry responses, because that's what we need to do today. It is a technical discussion today, and a technical decision.
I wasn't aware that it was a technical discussion. I thought we could come here to say what we feel, and that's what I've done. I just want to know how much the environment will be protected as by cutting down trees and pulling it up and replanting a few other trees. That's not going to protect the environment.
So, Chris has just reminded me that there is a 10% net gain in terms of
What does that mean exactly? Can I just ask? It sounds naive, but what exactly in realistic terms does that mean? 10% gain. You're going to add to what there is already, or you're going to take 100% away and put 10% back?
Leave us with what we've
I
got.
don't quite get how that works out in reality.
So, in simplistic terms, a net increase of 10%.
Chair, just to add, the details of this will come through in the planning application. I suspect this might not be the last time we meet, but the absolute detail, and I keep going back to the master plan is giving a very high level look at this. The detail, the 10% increase in the current biodiversity net gain, that will come through. A detailed plan will be coming through in planning applications. Okay?
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anna-Maria Thomas.
Personally, I'm totally opposed to building on any green space, especially established woods, ecosystems and floodplains, when we have so many sites that have already been developed. It is not fit to be.
Could you use the microphone, please?
Did you not hear that? I'll start again. Sorry. Personally, I'm totally opposed to building on any green space, especially established woods, ecosystems and floodplains, when we have so many sites that have already been developed, but that is not the debate here. My residents in Harrogate Hill are greatly disappointed that Skerningham woods are impacted, and I would ask that we do not automatically think that destruction of any part of the woods is the only solution. I understand that this is not a legally adopted document and is subject to change. I also know that we need to pay careful attention to future planning applications. I know that many others will speak about the differences or conflicts with the local plan and design code, but I would like to know how often this will be reviewed and who decides that this will come to Cabinet for review. And this is a question for Cabinet with regards to the 20-minute zones, and particularly schools. Harrogate Farm residents have a much longer journey to establish schools already, for instance, Harrogate Hill Primary School. Will you ensure that Section 106 money does indeed build a school to fulfil this need in the future?
Thank you, Marie. In terms of the school place planning, again, information like this will come through planning applications, but current information is that we will have a surplus of primary school and indeed secondary places because of falling birth rate. However, there is provision within the Skerningham site for primary school provision, but that will be subject to longer term planning, linking in school place planning and funding from government.
So, could you answer about how often can you ask about how often this will be reviewed and who decides when this will come to Cabinet for review?
Right. Well, the first thing to say is it will be reviewed as necessary. So I can't give a rate. It won't be 6 months, 12 months. It will be reviewed when there is something meaningful to add in. In terms of who decides, I think that's what I've suggested in the recommendation. The final recommendation is if there's any changes, then it comes back to Cabinet so that we've got an ongoing oversight.
That doesn't specifically answer the question, and I'm in a specifics. I don't know whether that's
At this time, I can't give you a firm whether it will be 12 months, 24 months, but it will be when there is material change to the master plan.
what specifies material change?
I think we asked, the reason for the vagueness is again, this is not our document. I would assume that a need to change it would come from the developers because it's their document. But the real point is that if and when that does happen, what the recommendation says is that the document will then come back to Cabinet. So if and when that does happen, then people will be aware.
So basically this document is a developer's document that has no legal bearing, so that it's almost like their ideas for the whole site, and that everything that's on there is not legally binding. So when the applications come through, we just have to go through every single application with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that it adheres to the design code and the supplementary planning documents. Is that correct?
Yes, but that's how our planning system works. But to your line point about this particular document, one of the recommendations in the report is that should there be a need to make changes to it, it would then come back to Cabinet. So, thank you. Ross Henderson.
Hi. So I remember sitting in this very spot
before I was a councillor, I was just a resident and pointing out issues with the Skerningham Design Code. But despite what I pointed out, it still went through Cabinet, only later to be recalled and changed. So I just implore you, let's not make the same mistake again. Please listen to the residents that have taken time out to come and speak, taken time out of their evenings, their weekends, to go through the fine-tooth comb and look at all of the documentations, spent hours and hours going through this. And the reason that they do that is because this is an issue that is going to affect their daily lives going forward. It's a huge thing. And I understand that residents will be able to comment on the individual planning applications. I understand that. But this master plan really is the last chance for the residents to comment on the overview of Skerningham Village, to see it as its whole, not just its parts. To look at, you could have one little planning application that might cause a little bit of traffic, but when you look at the whole thing, this is a huge volume. You've got to look at the whole thing. You can't just look at it in parts. This is why this is just so important. For me, there are fundamental flaws with the content of this master plan. This is not a master plan that supports a 20-minute neighbourhood as defined in the design code. And the design code specifically mentions education. And I know that, the master plan has said that it's not possible to be a 20-minute neighbourhood. But what's the point of having it in the design code? What's the point of having a design code if we're going to just ignore it and just say, well, it was just a nice thing to have. We don't have to really comply with it. So it is important, because if we don't have 20-minute neighbourhoods, what we're going to see is just massive traffic going down Salters Road, which is already congested, going down Barton Lane. We understand that the education village is full to capacity. If I've understood that correctly, that was the last thing I heard. That's not true, right? But even so, there's still going to be lots of traffic. Because if it's not within the 20-minute, so that's 10 minutes walk in there and 10 minutes walking back, just to be absolutely clear, we're just going to see, we're not going to see any of the children wanting to walk 25 minutes to school, 30 minutes to school, 35 minutes to school. They're going to have their parents drive them. So it's just going to be a huge volume of traffic. And we just need to get a grip on this issue, this thing that's coming down the road to us, this gridlock, because it doesn't look like we're going to see a local distributor road anytime soon, not until 2031 anyway. And this is not a master plan that follows the Department of Education guidelines on the number of assumptions on the children that are going to be per 100 households. It's underestimated. So the master plan is even guessing incorrectly the number of children and the amount of traffic that is going to be on this road. Also, this is not a master plan that will ensure sustainable travel that I can see. I can't see that there's going to be any cycle lanes really going to the schools. I haven't seen any evidence of school buses. The school route that is up there down Barton Lane is not reliable. So we don't have really any control over Arriva and how many buses they're putting on. So again, huge volume of traffic, leading to congestion and emissions. And also, this is not a master plan, which is an agreement of Network Rail and the landowners for the construction of the distributor road. So we don't even know that this traffic is going to be on there's going to be a viable road in 2031. And finally, this is not a master plan that protects Skerningham Woods. when we did the design code, so many residents said the road has got to avoid the woods. And one developer said they disagreed with that, despite 72 residents saying that they wanted it to avoid the woods. And here we are, it was added in. Avoid the woods as much as possible. That 4 little words were just inserted in there. And yeah, some trees have been cut down in a very much loved woodland. So Skerningham woods are definitely at risk. And these things that I've listed are not just simply wishes and desires in a master plan. These are essential. We must have these in. You said yourself, Councillor McEwen, that this is a long-term project. Well, this has long-term ramifications. All of these people sitting here and the people living in Harrogate Hill, living in Winfield, living down North Road, and they're going to have to live with this for a long time. So I really need you to look at this this master plan, and I just want you to be absolutely certain before you agree to this. And I have one question at the end of it. Oh, and if you do have any doubts, pass it to economy and resources scrutiny. It needs to be looked at. If you don't understand everything, you need to understand every single thing in here and the ramifications of it. So you need to just consider it carefully or pass it to scrutiny. And the one question I would ask is if Design North East are going to be looking at the planning applications to see whether the planning applications comply with the design code, can't they look at the master plan to see whether it complies?
Thank you. Can I call you Ross?
You can.
All right, Ross. Thank you. I mean, a couple of things in response to your general comments. First, you know, the design code was approved at Cabinet, much discussion, and Council, I can't remember how the Greens voted or whether you abstained or not. But that was discussed. The deferral was because the last administration bottled it, really. And it had to be done because we had a local plan that was a requirement, and we risked this spectre of non-determination, which can be quite serious, and then planners, developers can just do what they want. In respect of, you've raised a number of issues, one about 20-minute neighbourhood. Part of the master plan does sort of set out the need to develop walking and cycling infrastructure at its high level, and I keep going back to, I think Councillor Tom said, oh, we're going to have to look at the planning applications. Well, yes you are. That's where the detail will be, that's where the challenge, that's where other elements of the local plan will come into place, such as the policy within the local plan on sustainable travel, which will support people moving around, the issue around section 106. So from my perspective, I think with respect, I think you were conflating sort of detailed planning application issues and holding developers to account through that route and the master plan. And may I apologise profusely, what was the final question? See, I'm not perfect, Steve.
So there was 20-minute neighbourhood.
No, at the end you asked a question, sorry, we shouldn't get into it.
If Design North East is going to look at the planning applications to see whether they comply with the design code, could they not look at the master plan to do the same?
So, again, I need to be clear on this because I've had a number of questions about this. We have a design code. It has a checklist that's attached. that is explicitly for checking planning applications. That's what it's designed for. That's what the indicators should be used for. So it's not designed to check the master plan. It's been designed and developed for a different purpose. So that's a long-winded way of saying no. Its proper use is to use that checklist in any planning applications that come forward.
In the design code checklist, it says that the planning application should be a 20-minute neighbourhood for community services and education, up brackets, 10-minute walk in there, 10-minute walking back, close brackets.
Right.
Does this comply,
So-
yes or no? So, really, any planning application following on from this master plan should be a no.
Yeah.
So, if you get one no out of all of the design code checklists, the planning application should be refused.
But I think you've got it right. Planning is planning. The planning committee, this is a local planning authority, and the planning application process and the planning committee that has primacy in determining whether it progresses.
But if you're passing
Are we having a debate discussion here, Ross?
last one. If you pass this master plan, you're setting up the planning applications to fail because they'll all get no and the 20-minute neighbourhood.
So, just may I sum up?
Finally, yes.
All right, okay. Right, I'd remind you, Ross, right, that what we're seeking to do is, and I've said this several times, is understand whether it master plan complies with local plan design code. I've got officer advice, and I do trust officers this are here tonight, but also to give extra rigour and extra assurance, I sought legal counsel as to whether that was the right call to make. And also, when I come here tonight, is to inform cabinet colleagues, right, that officers and council have made a judgment that it does comply. We're not approving it, we're not adopting it because it's not our document. I'm sure we can discuss this further.
In the actual cabinet papers.
Sorry.
Thank you, Ross.
Okay.
Patricia, Meredith?
Hi, I hope you can all hear me. I haven't really prepared very much because I didn't think I would be able to make it tonight. However, I wanted my voice to be heard, and it's not just my voice, it's the voice of probably most of North Darlington. I'm a resident of Howard Hill, and I grew up in Horton Village, and I volunteer for the Friends of Rockwell Nature Reserve. I'm passionate, very passionate about nature and wildlife and everything, as I think most people are. But especially I think in this situation, I think more consideration should be given about using brownfield sites before green spaces. But my main concern, as I said, I do volunteer for Rockwell Nature Reserve, and that's where I actually grew up, Edging National Reserve. Since the local plan was adopted in 2022, we can all see by watching the news, etc., about the impact of flooding, the climate change, global warming, etc., the more rain that we're getting. And the River Skern has already, has always flooded. Years ago, there was measures put in place to put meanders in Rockwell to stop the flooding of the houses there, which has worked, but the Skern still does flood often. And now that we're getting more and more rain, it's becoming more and more apparent. And new buildings are also having an impact on flooding, such as the Beaumont Hill sites. The last lot of heavy rain we had, that was all flooded because the water hasn't got anywhere to go basically, so it went on to 167,
and it goes into all the houses, all those bungalows along the 167 at Beaumont Hill, all their gardens have been flooded practically all the time since that new build. So this leads on to why I think personally, and lots of other people think, that the development of Skerningham is just going to make the Skern flood even more, especially as there's a floodplain involved and going to be houses built on that. So the Skern floods even more, probably fine for the residents of Skerningham, because the water's going to just come straight down, flood through Horton, which already does that now, and through Rockwell, which has an impact not just on the green space and the walking areas that are there, but Rockwell Nature Reserve is a very heavily used commuter and walking to school route. When the Skern floods, that option isn't available to people. It's going to flood even more often if Skerningham goes ahead, because that water will come down. I'm not an engineer, I can't give you all the technical details or whatever, but I'm just a layperson with eyes in my head and a bit of common sense occasionally. So when you talk about technical considerations, what technical considerations are going to be taking place for the residents? Now I'm just using Rockwell and Horton and that area as an example, but the Skern comes all the way through Darlington, so it's got going to impact on all areas of Darlington. What technical sort of considerations will be taking place to, well, it would be nice to not have Skerningham, that would be ideal, but if it does happen, to stop the flooding of the Skern so much so that people can still use, as I say, I'm just using Rockwell as an example, as a commuter route and a walking to school route. And I wasn't aware about this 20-minute neighbourhoods until sitting here tonight. It's been really informative. So the people that are already there using North Road School, commuting through from from West Park area of town to go to up to Cummings and that sort of area, they put through Rockwell Nature Reserve. That's going to be, the diversions in place when it floods even more and more, the walking to the commuter routes. What is going to happen in the future, please?
Okay, thank you, Pat. Well, first thing to say, thank you for the work that you do in Rockwell, and you and I have got a great taste in the right dogs, haven't we? We've both got colleagues. I think the first thing to say is, you mentioned brownfield sites. Yeah, I'll be the first to say, if I get brownfield sites, particularly in town centre, we need more people living in our town centres, short walk, give us hospitality. So we need a mixed economy solution, but as I often say to people, when you're at certain stations in your life, sometimes you want to live in a town centre, sometimes, and as you move on, you may wish to have a larger house with a garden, etc. So brownfield sites, it is something that we look. It's not just about Skerningham, and I've mentioned before, and a lot of people disagree with me, and that's fair enough, but we do need more housing, we need more affordable housing. In terms of flood risk, and this is an issue that has been raised several times with me, not just about Skerningham, but about developments per se. I'd remind people of what I was saying earlier about the master plan's high level. The detail around if a planning application goes forward and what is the flood risk or the consequential impact in other areas in terms of flooding, that will be dealt with there. And it's important to note that the Environment Agency and the Thumbry Water are both statutory consultees, and they've got a duty to comment on an application and suggest and work with developers to ensure that they're putting measures such as SUDS. I don't know what SUDS stands. I should know what SUDS stands for. Yeah, SUDS, ponds and such like to mitigate against flooding. And I've recognised some of the, I'm a councillor in Horton Springfield, I recognise some of the challenges that we've faced with the rising river. And I think we've had Horton Road block twice, I think, this year through flooding. But it's certainly an issue that the Environment Agency and the Thumbry Water have a statutory duty to look at the planning application that comes through
and say to the developer, we'll only give our approval if you do A, B and C. Okay? Okay. We'll no doubt discuss this again.
Yes, we will.
Thanks for the question.
Scott Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor McKeon, for presenting this report this evening for approval. The number of people within this room suggests that there's a crisis of confidence in the decision-making process. Now, it's been suggested earlier that obviously this paper could have been brought to various committees, and it is your discretion and Cabinet widely that it could have been brought to the highest level of decision-making process and scrutiny within this council, which would have been full council. Personally, I think there's a missed opportunity there to satisfy the potential crisis of confidence that there is. It's a difficult one, this, because it's obviously, as you said, it is a developer-led paper, but we've got to satisfy ourselves that when decisions go through this council, that members have had sight and considered all of the issues. In terms of the local plan, we all wrestled with conscience in terms of housing numbers, etc. We all had to look at issues within our own wards as well as wider benefits for the whole of the community. And that's just not housing, that's infrastructure, that's roads, that's the economic benefits that can be brought by a robust local plan. If I just give you an example in the ward that you've mentioned earlier, the ward which I cover, Brickburn and Favourdale, and you talked about the Spine Road. Now, when we're all making decisions, we take on board advice that was given. Now, one of the things there with that development was, one of the key benefits was that Spine Road and how it could alleviate traffic on the A68 as the circular road across the town starts to develop. But then comes reality in terms of the detail, the planning, as you mentioned. One of the planning conditions stipulates that that road cannot come into operation until improvements are made to the Great Burden roundabout, of which there was a section 106 contribution from planning application. Now, effectively we've got a road to nowhere, further pressure on a main road. This master plan also makes reference to wider strategic road improvements, again referencing the A66 Great Burden roundabout. So you obviously said right at the very beginning is the fact that this could have been an officer decision, but you decided to inform yourself and inform Cabinet, and by bringing it here to decide upon. So therefore my question is, are you confident that there will be no similar planning conditions applied to the Skerningham development as there were to the Berkshire Garden Village? And are you also satisfied that cumulatively the contributions from Berkshire and from Skerningham will ensure that we have fully operational and satisfactory Great Burden improvement? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. I am quite praising Scott Durham, even though he wears a different football shirt at times. But I think it was a bit of playing politics there. And the reason I say that, his colleagues were well aware, one of his colleagues is sat next to his portfolio lead, who will be well aware of the circumstances and context to the master plan. We took a decision we didn't have to, because it's not our policy. We took a decision to come here in the full knowledge there'd be open discussion, which there has been, but also every member of this authority can come and speak, and you've spoken, and others have spoken. In terms of, just to repeat it, it's not something that would go to council. In terms of my confidence about whether we're doing the right thing, I'd also say, and I must have said it 15 times tonight, we sought advice from professional officers who've gone into this in immense detail, but also we sought external legal counsel to ensure me and colleagues that we're doing the right thing. In respect of, and I think your question was about, we can speak offline about this, the unintended consequences and whether things that will need doing in terms of, and I presume you were referring to Great Burton roundabout and the work that clearly the traffic modelling is dynamic in nature, and whilst we have a master plan, and I alluded to there may well be further changes, and I think Councillor Thomas said, well, what do you mean by material? Well, a material change might be updated traffic modelling, which may well impact on the Skerningham master plan, or indeed some of the works required for Great Burton as we go forward.
Thank you, Chris. Frank Kirby.
My name's Frank Kirby. I live at 30 Annandale. My bungalow backs onto Barton Lane. My bedroom window is 3 metres away from the edge of the road. I'm not so sure what the councillor said when the traffic will be going down Barton Lane or not, but as far as I'm concerned, it is. As I think it's going down Barton Lane. Now, I can't understand how you're going to get all that traffic down Barton Lane. For the life of me, I can't. And my bedroom's 3 metres away from the road. 30 Annandale. Come and check if you like. That's all I'm here for. Just to explain that it affects lives. That's all I'm here for.
Thank you.
Just in response to Mr. Kirby, I know where you live. I walk past up Barton Lane when I'm out with the dog. So I take on board what you said, and what I'd suggest is you need to make representations at planning. Now, in respect of the volume of traffic, I think this was discussed in the design code meeting, or the design code approval meetings, both at Cabinet and Council. And the fact of the matter is there's been recent traffic modelling. I expressed doubt myself, but the traffic modelling indicates that it can handle it. I think the more reassuring aspect is the potential to, the strong potential to avoid any construction traffic going through. And I'll keep residents updated through that route.
Thank you, Chris. John Dixon.
Is it Bucko or George?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Even I can.
My question is about the distributor road. And earlier, about an hour and a half ago or something, you, Councillor McEwen, thank you, mentioned, and my hearing isn't too good, you mentioned about the distributor road is going to go from Bishopton and not Barton Lane. In which case, is that to say that, for obvious reasons, that's going to be in place? Is that going to be in place before any houses are built? which would then mean, in my mind, there'd be no heavy goods vehicles going along Bounton Lane and Windbush Road. My question is that going to happen, please?
All right, thank you, John. So what I said earlier at the top of the meeting was there's two things here. There's the distributor road, when that will be put in place, and that's got to be put in place after a certain number of properties are completed. But what I indicated earlier was in terms of construction, right, there will be what's called a haul road, H-A-U-L, a haul road, which would go from Bishopton Lane to the top of any development if an application is approved, and indeed that may well be a planning condition. And that would be to take the construction traffic off Barton Lane, because there was clearly concern at many meetings about construction traffic travelling up Barton Lane. But I don't think it would. I think from what you were saying, if you don't mind, it's not going to take the A1 to the 66 heavy goods off Winfield Road. You know, that's about a northern relief road.
I understand that.
Which,
so Barton Lane and Windbush presumably will not be taking heavy goods vehicles.
Relating to any construction if a planning application
Fine,
is approved.
You've answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
And finally, can I just say that I commend these people who have been, the two gentlemen, Ross and one or two other people. They're just trying to tell you all, that for heaven's sake, just do what the peasants want. I call them peasants because sometimes you're treating us like peasants. So just listen, read what they're saying, and try and adhere to them and help them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last my list, but so that I don't miss anyone out because they have to submit their name.
Let's ask a question, please.
One moment, if there's anyone else that's named to be missed off, then if you could indicate now, please. Yeah.
Okay. The name is Mr. Fred Greenhow. I've a simple question that it's never been answered yet. It's referring back to a document. Now, I know the document is an old document dated 2015, but one thing that's never been answered, and I've asked this question several times. Skerningham always came up with the document as not suitable for the following reasons. Okay, it's part of the Greenfield site. It's part of the site within flood zone 3, most of flood zone 1. There will be significant loss of countryside. Okay, it would have a detrimental effect here, as indicated by the CCRA. When you move over to constraints, highways are quite clearly said, yes, there will be major network implications that can probably only be resolved by construction of a northern bypass. Access from existing local roads like Clean Road would not be acceptable. No sewage or water infrastructure, etc., etc. So my question is quite simple. How can a piece of land that's deemed unsuitable for building, all of a sudden a year later, is suitable for building? Nothing has happened to that piece of land. The house will go from not suitable to being suitable. We will all see houses. Chris, my grandson's 22. I can't wait for him to move out. My granddaughter's 21. We will always be affordable housing, but they need to be in the right place. The River Skern is highlighted earlier flood. Come down and see my paddock at Darlington. As soon as it rains heavy, the paddock floods. It's a natural floodplain. I walk up there just about every day because I live in Darlington. Okay, I live there. Okay, I see what the water effect has. You mentioned earlier, Chris, about how the traffic lights are. How many times does that get flooded? So we're going to build on a natural floodplain, but are these houses going to go on stilts? I'm asking a serious question. Okay? I mean, if you put concrete as highway, if you put concrete on top of a floodplain, we're going to get more water, and water runs downhill.
So it's going to run down towards Skerningham, it's going to run down towards Darlington. Farm isn't enough now. So my question is very simple. How can a piece of land deemed unfit for building be all of a sudden fit for building?
All I can say is work was progressed and we corresponded on this, haven't we, Fred? Sorry, I was distracted by the audience. But so we corresponded about this. What I would say is what I said then, and that is this has been through a lengthy process. It's been through local plan. More importantly, it was judged by an inspector to be sound, and they will have gone into all of the relevant information. Some of the issues that you flagged about floodplain, etc., I'd go back to, I think it was Pat's question about Environment Agency and Northumbria Water, who will be a statutory consultee and will look at that application and advise and judge accordingly. So I've got no other comment than that.
Well, what about the sewage, etc.? Okay, stress on at the moment, stress out, right? So what's going to happen? I mean, I'm going to see more sewage in the River Skern because those houses won't be able to take, or the developers thought about, hello, this is what we're going to do here, how are we going to handle the sewage? I mean, I've got a septic tank, okay? I mean, everybody in Barnsley, we know gas, we're all perfect, not even septic, etc. So what's going to be the master plan? Because not everything's going to link into stress out, they can't. And then going back to, somebody mentioned the lack of confidence. For example, we know our previous MP, hey, we take Skerningham. Or one of the ward councillors, hey, we take Skerningham. Okay? We hear things, and there's all the Facebook, what we're going to do, what we're going to say, this is what we saved. And then there's a lack of confidence that we hear one thing that damages to another. It's very, I tell you one thing I do and I give you congratulations for, is having this open meeting here. Okay, it's absolutely brilliant that you've allowed us to come here and voice our opinions. So thank you so much for that, because it needs to be heard. And I attended, like most people here, we attended every design council, every design code meeting. We sat there, we did all the plans, we did everything. Okay, and then all of a sudden, at the very last meeting, 2 MPs turned up. Our previous one, and the one from over the road there, New Native Lane. Okay, so they turned up at the very last minute. These people around us here have been to every design code meeting. Okay, and we've been arguing this. I moved in this village in 2007. So we're quite well aware, okay, and I agree with what people are saying there. Listen to what we're saying as well. I agree we need houses, but put them in the right area. Do not put them in a floodplain. I am not an engineer, but I know what goes downhill.
Okay. Thanks for that, Fred. Am I allowed to bring a colleague in who just make some comment on no? Sorry? Yeah, could I? Libby might be able to make a comment on the stress zone.
Sorry, thank you for the hospital, Stress. Mr. Greenwood, you'll be more than aware, obviously, if you're aware of stress zones, capacity issues currently, you'll be more than aware that Northumbria Water has given its assurance that it has got infrastructure building capacity going forward. And plans are obviously going to be activated by the building of houses and securing of those, and their obligation is an undertaker to make sure they're connected. There are plans in place, sir, and I give my assurance that this authority and planning committee has borne the brunt of it in several meetings I've been at. Capacity will be made. There is that obligation.
From what I heard last time, these new plans which are going to take place after the building had started. That was my understanding of what I heard.
And I think
we need to obviously have.
The question, a similar question was asked earlier on, and I think the point that was made earlier on is that there are a number of issues, and one of those is to do with water collection and sewage. Is that at the time the planning application is determined, one of the consultees are those relevant bodies, and at that point it is up to them to say there isn't the infrastructure in place. And if that is the case, then planning will make a decision, and one of the possibilities it has is to say, before you go ahead, these things have to be met.
But that's the point. We've had our last MP saying Skerningham was saved.
If I can finish, please.
All I'm saying is, we hear one thing, but then you do another. That's what I'm saying. You don't give us the confidence, but you're not giving them the confidence that, yes, we're going to do that, and what will happen.
And the point I'm making with regards to storage information now, the point at which the conversation's had about whether anything needs to be done, specifically to do a particular development, is at the planning stage. They have statutory consultees and they will comment on planning applications to give their view as to whether, from their perspective, it's presenting with a problem. And then, if that is the case, the planning commission will then make a decision on the applications, whether conditions need to be put on the presumption it's granted, that before the development can go ahead, certain things have to be done. And that's when that discussion will take place. It's not something that is relevant in that sense in terms of the master plan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good to see you.
Nobody else has indicated that they wish to speak. So just out of most of the time, it would be helpful if someone is wanting to speak, if they could show their hands, just to engage. So I've got 3 hands. Is there anyone else like to speak? Brian, it's the first time to talk about.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'll be very quick. Many of the residents here have clearly been through, as people have said, the master plan with a fine-tooth comb. And I'm concerned that some of the issues raised actually conflict with the local plan. Can we, with confidence, agree this master plan tonight if those issues are actually in conflict with the local plan? Thank you.
To respond, I reiterate, we've got professional officers that have looked at this, we've got external advice, particularly legal counsel. I am confident that it complies with local plan and design code. Thank you.
There's 2 people at the back who I don't know names, but the gentleman, thank you.
My name is Bill Rowell and I'm a resident of Darlington. What's concerned me about a lot of the discussion tonight is that people are raising issues of provision of infrastructure, and your answer has invariably been, we can address that at the planning stage. Given that the planning applications will come in piecemeal, my question is, what mechanism is there to exercise control over the impact of the whole scheme?
Thank you, Mr. Rowell. So, I think I've said that the master plan has oversight over the whole scheme, and elements of the infrastructure will be dealt with through mechanisms in the local plan, so the distributor road. The education issue is quite interesting because some detail work's being done on that. One, there is provision for potential new primary, but also there's been work done to understand what the forward look at the forecast for the next 5, 10, 15 years will be in terms of primary school places. That work is being done already. And what I just conclude by saying, I was speaking to somebody about this earlier, why don't you build a primary school now? Why would we build a primary school that would be empty, so to speak?
Yeah, if I can just ask a supplementary question based on that response. That is part of my concern, that when you start looking at the detail, you lose the oversight of the whole picture. And surely, with something as large as this, and the infrastructure requirements that it develops, it's the whole picture that needs some overall control. My concern is there doesn't appear to be any way of achieving that.
as I've said, this is a developer-led plan that we will have oversight, so if there are significant changes, they will be coming back to Cabinet.
So just to add in the example you gave about provision of education places at primary or secondary level, whilst in some regards, well not in some regards, in terms of the development that takes place there, there's some thought must go into about how many children of school age will come about because of that development. But that's not the only part of what needs to be considered in the land about that. We know, for example, that because of the decline in birth rates.
Could you speak into the microphone? It's people hear it badly.
Because we know there's a decline in birth rates, other factors that we need to consider is what the school age population is across the town as a whole. And whilst we know that a new development will bring forward families with young children, we also know at the same time that there are a number of schools in Darlington where the school levels are falling because the birth rate is in decline. And therefore, in deciding what provision we make for education, we need to look at what is required across the borough as a whole. Because as Chris has alluded to, we're not going to build schools that are only partially full. We need to think about it across the piece. So in answer to your question, it's not just what's happening in Skerningham. There are certain things that we need to consider. It's what's happening across the borough as a whole. Some of those decisions we need to also take into account. And finally, there was a hand at the back. I can't see who. If you'd like to come forward.
Born and bred in Darlington, love Skerningham, walk there every week. There was a question about the Hall Road, that footprint. You say it's coming over from Little Burn that way, is that correct? The Hall Road that goes
I haven't got the detail, but I suspect it will follow the old Quarry Road. If you recall, it was Bishopton Lane, turn left, Quarry Road, and there was a military bridge over into.
Am I correct in thinking that a house is going to be built on the west side of Darlington Lane, on the corner, first row of houses, 450 houses? Is that correct?
It's what's detailed in the master plan, but if I may finish, the detail will come through in the plan application.
Can I just suggest, how is the Hall Road going to cross Darlington Lane without causing problems to people living in Darlington Village? They're going to be hemmed in, aren't they? How on earth are they going to get to Winfield Road, down to town, when there's heavy plant material going on?
So the planning is going on, and I'm sure they'll be thinking about how they do that, because we wouldn't want that to happen quickly. And finally, did I link in with you in relation to Low Coniscliffe? No?
No.
All right. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
All right.
Thank you. Before I bring in members sitting on the table, just to thank members of the public that have come to the meeting to give their views. And thank you, Chris, for giving those questions. Colleagues around the table, are there any questions or comments that you wish to make? Matthew.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Chris. But most of all, I'd like to thank all the members of the public who have made time to come tonight to this meeting. And not only the members who are the public who are here now, but the countless numbers who've contacted me to say they'd love to be here, but they have other more pressing engagements or family commitments or work commitments. So their voices are also must be heard tonight. So with occasions, Chris, you've referred to the passing of the local plan by the previous administration, which of course is factually accurate. But of course, this local plan has your fingerprints all over it. It was written largely under your watch. But of course, we must also acknowledge the collaboration by the Conservative and the Dem groups during that period before 2019. This was a plan that was a long time in the making. I've been involved with this and seeing the production of the local plan for many years and the support of the members of the public here who've done the detail work. It is a great help to myself and the other campaigners. We've seen pre-local plan meetings, local plan meetings, design code meetings and comprehensive master plan meetings. And many of the questions raised by residents have always been met with the answer, now's not the time to ask for that. Now's not the time to seek assurance. Now's not the time to get the answer you need. Hang on a little bit later and we'll get to the detail in the plan. And we've talked about confidence here, we've heard that as a recurring theme through the day. We've seen planning applications go through with huge opposition to. So the confidence of the public that is the time that the buck stops is still lacking. And so I'm glad that we have Green Party members on the planning committee. I don't have a vote tonight on this because it's a cabinet decision. And I know that the Cabinet will make a decision tonight on this, and I know that Steve's already referred that he will comment on the call-in procedure, which Cabinet members have the power in the Constitution to refer a decision from Cabinet to another body, and that's their decision to make if they wish to tonight. But also, scrutiny committee members have the power to call in decisions within 5 days if they feel they want to do so. So that confidence level is low, and we must take the public with us, if at all. References have been made to biodiversity net gain, and I think Steve, you and Chris, you mentioned how it is intending that after development has taken place, there will be 10% more biodiversity than before. But what does that mean in reality? It means that biodiversity that was been there for centuries only has 30 years in its new form of protection. After that 30 years is up, though that biodiversity that has maybe been there for thousands of years only has a 30-year lifespan now. And imagine, what's that 10% extra mean? Imagine 100 metres of hedgerow, ancient hedgerow, thousands of species, from fungi, bacteria, insects, rodents, invertebrates, reptiles. It's ripped up, it's destroyed, and then some time later, before the developer moves on, 110 metres of little whips are put in with their plastic covers around them. And that apparently is okay. I don't think it's okay, but that is apparently all sorted now. Nothing to see here. We talked about education, and I note on the papers today it's the only amber light flashing away on this document. There are some which are grey, they don't apply, they do come later. Many are in green, but there's one on amber. And this is important. It's important that we get schools in the right place, and as soon as possible. Because schools are more than just classroom. Schools are, for many people, the heart of their community. They provide many activities and a space for other things to happen, the glue that holds pieces together. And the idea that people are going to have to make long journeys across the north of town to find a school is not satisfactory. The papers I've seen show a calculation of an additional 20 primary school children for every 100 homes in Skerningham. The Department for Education say it should be 25, not 20. So the sums are off there. But when you dig down, I think it's fact sheet number 5 from the Department for Education planning for new schools. That 25 per 100 is for existing homes. When you build new homes, you get even more children. And when you build big homes, new homes, you get even more. So I am still concerned that the education part of this local plan, this comprehensive master plan, will not satisfy the needs of future generations. Finally, we've talked about legal advice, and I was, thanks to Mr Swinhoe, able with a colleague, Councillor Holroyd, to take advantage of reading through all of the legal opinions that the Council has received. Council was asked three things. Is this master plan in a state that can be accepted by Council? It also asked about the right place to make that decision, and it asked about the legal implications of bringing forward this master plan depending on land ownership. Councillor June, you correctly said that the master plan was considered in a state where it can be accepted. Also that the case law seems to indicate that Cabinet is a suitable place for that decision to be made. But when it came to the majority of that legal opinion, it seemed more concerned about was the Council exposed to legal blowback from other landowners than was this plan going to serve the people of Darlington well. And I thought it was interesting that the main thrust of the Council was protect itself from people with big lawyers and deep pockets than from angry people who are worried about what's going to happen to their countryside and their town. So you have the vote, I don't. But we'll see what happens, and we'll see you in planning when it happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Smith, for your comment. Just briefly, you know full well the challenges that we face in terms of housing in this town, and I was getting quite worried there because I think you were coming across as very anti-deal with the housing issue, which I find quite disappointing. The second point is, I'm very clear with that legal advice. You seem to be reading council opinion and making an interpretation of that when I've had council opinion and had our own in-house legal advice on what it means, but there you go. And in terms of that opinion about we can take it to Cabinet, we didn't have to take it to Cabinet. You know, we chose to take it to Cabinet. So there you go. I think it's been very helpful.
Jonathan. Thank you, Steve. I think just to echo what Councillor Serco was saying about this process, because I genuinely feel, as a former leader, having been briefed on this, that the next stage along the road has always been the stage in which we would address the issues that have been raised at that point. And yet now at the master plan stage, we're being told that actually it'll be addressed at the planning stage. And I'm sure once we get to the planning stage, people can tell us, well, no, that's at the appeal stage. And then once we get to the appeal stage, we then fall off a cliff. Because every step of the way, we seem to be told something different. And like I say, genuinely, on the briefings that I've had when I was in the executive, leading the executive, feel like the assurances that have been raised today would have been picked up on the processes that have come before us. But yet, every time we get a different stage, it's like, oh, well, no, that's for tomorrow. And there's going to be a time where tomorrow is not going to come. I do want to address a few things. Firstly, on a positive note, I think it's really positive that the developer has secured the land necessary to be able to put in that home road, because that is really key. And I know that I started that conversation back in 2022, so I'm really happy that developers have followed through with that, and that will be a significant step in the issue moving forward. What I want to talk about today is about democracy, and it was raised by a member of the public. The Conservatives faced into the local plan. Many people had different opinions, and we followed it through. And that damaged us politically, and ultimately we lost seats and lost control of the council. At this time, the Labour Party were putting out messages like, we will scrap Skerningham in its entirety, or we will scale it down as much as possible. What we've seen since then is actually you haven't followed through with that, and quite the opposite. It's now got less protection than what we were proposing. So I think it is disingenuous of the Labour Party to continue to go full steam ahead. Now, what I think is clear tonight, having seen the people who've made the contributions and the volume of people that have come forward, that there is a trust issue with politicians, particularly control and administration, and there's an opportunity. You know, I think people will agree that whilst you have gone back on your election manifesto, your promises to scrap Skerningham, there is an opportunity, and the opportunity tonight is to take it one step further and take it to council. Now, we accept you don't have to bring it to this point. You didn't have to do that, you chose to do that. But I think in terms of getting some credibility back from the public of the council as an entity, as well as your administration, a good positive step would be actually to move it on to full council so that all councillors can have an active discussion on the next stage, and that residents who are here tonight can feel that their councillor, who represents them and their views, is having a meaningful contribution to the debate. Now, you can absolutely do that. That's what I'm asking you to do. You're absolutely within your gift to do, and I would seriously ask that you consider doing that. And I think that is it.
I'll just make some brief comment, Jonathan. I think you lost, not just because of Skerningham, but that's another story. Second, you in charge of this, move forward the process. And finally, may I call you Jonathan? Councillor Dulston, and I reflected on this, about the whole debate around the kind of the. Whilst what the dog seriously do a lot of thinking and a lot of phone calls as well. But I reflected on this, and we didn't need to bring it to Cabinet, but it's been useful, very useful. But the second thing, this whole issue about council. Now the issue of Cabinet is any member could have attended and spoken. Now the issue with council is, right, any member, right, of the public or any member of the council could have stood up last Thursday and said, what are you doing with this master plan? But the Greens didn't, and the Tories didn't, and the Independents didn't. So actually, to say it should go to council for debate, because we can't agree on anything, you've got an opportunity to ask me a question, right? And nobody did. So there you go. Steve.
Any other questions or comments? Just to pick up on a couple of things before being crucified, just on that final point about whether it's, which is the most appropriate decision-making part of the local authority to bring this to. It wasn't clear, as Chris has indicated. It's a very peculiar situation in that what's before us is a document that hasn't been written by the local authority, but we have to do something, agree is the wrong word, we have to give a view about it as to whether it does two key things. A, whether it does not contradict the local plan, secondly, whether it does not contradict the design code. Of all the things that the local authority does in terms of decision-making process, it is rather a peculiar objective that we're set to do that, and that is why in coming to the decision about where that should be, where those views should be aired, where the decision should be made, there wasn't a money store on answer. Council gave its view as to what they thought was the most appropriate place. It was quite clear, because of the nature of it, that the decision of the view about whether it's met the conditions that it needs to be could be taken by officers. As Chris said, he wasn't comfortable with that, neither was I. I think think in terms of allowing members of the public the opportunity to participate, Cabinet is probably acting in better places than full council. Just in terms of the structures we have for decision making and participation, and the fact that this is a small venue, I would argue that it is easier for members of the public to come to a Cabinet meeting and air their views than it is to a full council meeting, which in terms of the manner in which it is conducted is far more formal, far more processy, and far more rule-bound than Cabinet can ever be. And therefore, in terms of giving members of the public the opportunity to come and have their say, to give their views, to ask their questions, in my view, I felt that Cabinet was actually the best place that would enable members of the public to attend. I recall when decisions about the local plan, public participation at the council meeting was actually quite difficult. This has been a much better forum to allow members of the public to take place, which I think for me was particularly important about this process. A number of members have made comments about the level of interest in this, and that's, it's not surprising. And therefore, when I came to a view about where we should take this in terms of all the parts of the local authority that we could make a decision about what our views on the master plan, I felt that this was the best and most appropriate place for both the decision-making process in terms of what council has to do, but also to enable members of the public to participate in what I felt was the most appropriate and most accommodating forum for them to do that. I think also, reflecting on a number of comments that Andrew Maycroft particularly made reference to, it's about what we do today. Some of the comments that have been made by some of the people who have spoken, that they felt that there hasn't been a lot of passion in the speech. I'll reiterate what I said earlier. It's not that this matter as a whole in the round about Skerningham is devoid of passion. Clearly, there are many members of the public, some here today, some not, who have very strong views and very passionate about it. What I've reiterated again is that the decision that's being made today, in terms of that whole process about Skerningham and all the decisions about development in that area, the decision that we are making today is actually a very particular, a very technical decision that's being made. In simple terms, somebody has written a document, the developers, and the local authority has to give a view whether it does not contradict two other documents. And that's a really, really dry decision, and therefore many of the things that have been said today are really facts about things that are in or not in the decision, those things that are said or not said in the local plan and some of the master plan. We simply have to give a view as to whether this document doesn't contradict two other documents, and I keep repeating that because it's important that we understand that. In a sense, the words that are used in the master plan are less relevant in terms of, I've been struggling all day to how to articulate this. The facts that are in the master plan are more important than the way that it's written. The master plan can be written in a million of different ways and still makes what it needs to be. And we all would have had a view whether version A or version B was better written. But two different versions of this document, we would still have to make the same decision about, does it contradict the local plan? Does it contradict the design code? And however the document is written, whatever words are used within it, if that test is met, then the decision today for us is just to say yes, it meets that criteria. And again, that's, I feel, is why a lot of the discussion today has been very dry and without passion. And it's not because there's no passion, it's simply because of the task that is before us today. Coming back to the point about scrutiny, again, this is a technical issue, but I think it's important. Council procedures tell us about where decisions are made within the local authority. Some decisions are made by Cabinet, some decisions are made by full council, and there are different reasons why certain things go to full council and certain things are made by Cabinet. In the instance of decisions that are made by Cabinet, if you like, one of the backstops for that decision-making process is that we have scrutiny. As colleagues will know, we've been intimated by a number of members committee, Cabinet should not interfere with what scrutiny chooses to do or not to do. That's the whole point of our scrutiny committees, is to independently look at the work of both the Cabinet but also the implementation of policies that we have. Cabinet does have the opportunity and the procedures allow us to do that, to refer things to scrutiny. In my mind, there are particular circumstances where we would choose to do that. And fundamentally, it's been about, I think this is the intent in terms of the Constitution, but it's also in terms of where this has actually happened in practice in the past. Documents or policies or ideas that council is in control of in terms of it is a policy, it is writing in terms of wide direction of the local authority, policies about the services that we provide. Those documents that we write, sometimes we will consult on those documents, sometimes we don't, it depends. Where we consult on those documents, typically that consultation will involve members of the public, members of interested communities, but also scrutiny. I would argue in this instance, this kind of document sits outside that. We are not asked, or we're not charged today with saying whether we agree with how the master plan was written, whether it gets the points across that it should make, whether it says the things that we think it should articulate about the development. We are simply asked, does it not contradict the design code, and does it not contradict the local plan? That is a very technical, dry decision to make. And therefore my view is, in terms of what Cabinet should do, because of that decision-making process, the question before that is am I content that the master plan as it stands doesn't contradict the design code, does it not contradict the local plan? My view is that is the case. It does not make that contradiction. And therefore I am content in my view, we will have a vote. But I feel that Cabinet should make a decision on the basis of whether it does or does not do that. Members of the Relevant Scrutiny Committee may take a different view, and it's entirely within their gift if they feel that the decision that has been made here today, whatever that may be, is the wrong decision. They are entitled to call that in. So, however we handle that decision today, it does not include from scrutiny, and members of scrutiny having an entirely different view about things that were said today, and also the decision that Cabinet does make. And therefore, my recommendation to Cabinet is that we do not refer it on to scrutiny. There is a mechanism for that to happen, so even if we do not do it, there is a disagreement that can take place by members of scrutiny. No one else has indicated that they wish to speak. Chris, before we move to the vote, can I ask you to
succinctly. I would echo what you said, and indeed I've made a comment in many emails that I've sent around, to scrutiny what they do. But I should just sum up very briefly and say, before us we have a document which is not ours. We've been asked to, as part of the design code, confirm whether it complies with both design code and local development plan. It will evolve over time, and I can't, apologies to colleagues who've asked this question, at this time I can't give a firm whether it will be 6 months or 12 months, but it will evolve over time, but Cabinet will have ongoing oversight. But primacy of this process will be at planning application process, the planning application committee, the planning committee. I saw.
Thank you, Chris. I'm looking at it was seconded at the beginning, wasn't it? It's been moved and seconded earlier. Can we get a show of hands as to whether we agree? Thank you, colleagues. That has been carried. Finally, just again, can I thank members of the public that have taken the time? It hasn't been a long time.